Hello, Kuman29 here with another Topic of the Week video. This week's video will be over The Dark Knight, the movie, the 2010 movie by Christopher Nolan. This week's topic was submitted by Tumblr user Angel89. Her topic was, why do you think that while The Dark Knight makes for a good movie, it doesn't make for a good Batman/comic book adaptation? Okay, I know I'm going to be unpopular when I say this, and I know there are probably going to be people who get mad at me for this. I don't like The Dark Knight. As a Batman fan, I hate The Dark Knight. I think it's a bad Batman movie. It's a good movie on a technical basis. It's well done, and Christopher Nolan is generally good at that, but as a Batman movie, as a comic book movie, it fails. Let me explain. One of the biggest issues with how Nolan approaches comic book movies is that he almost feels like he's trying to fix comic books. It's the, comic books are cool and all, but, they're really stupid or for kids. Let me make them cool. I kind of feel like Nolan is constantly trying to legitimize comics, and in a way that completely tosses out what they are, what comic books are, which are inherently ridiculous, and try to make them gritty, realistic, and down to earth. And that just doesn't work with everything. And Batman is one of the few heroes that I think could work with that approach, as long as you use the right villains. I like Batman Begins. I'm saying this. I like Batman Begins. I think it's Nolan's best superhero. I think it's his only good superhero movie. But even then, it had the inherent issue of trying to scrub out all of the comic booky things. And I think the point is, why would you even adapt a comic book superhero if you want to get rid of all the comic booky aspects of it? It's like, how interesting would Iron Man be if Iron Man couldn't fly? Or if that was deemed unrealistic. You have to keep some bits of absurdity for the sheer fact of it to work. I mean, in Batman Begins, I love that they use the Scarecrow. I think the Scarecrow is a villain in Batman that you can legitimately adapt in a more real-world setting. But then he used Ra's al Ghul, the 600-year-old semi-immortal eco-terrorist ninja leader of a terrorist organization. And he tried to take away the supernatural aspect by completely getting rid of the Lazarus pits. My question is, why? This kind of approach is what really ruins The Dark Knight for me. The Dark Knight, they used the Joker. He uses the Joker. One of the most ridiculous characters in Batman mythos, period. Like, he's not the most supernatural, but he's the most ridiculous. If you watch any episode of Batman animated series with where the main villain in it is the Joker, you will see what I mean when you say he's the most ridiculous. But he tries to turn him into this gritty, realistic character. And in doing so, I actually rewatched The Dark Knight. I rewatched it last night and then I finished it this morning. Because the movie's 2.5 hours long. I noticed something. The Joker is not the Joker. He has bits of the Riddler. He has bits of Zsasz. And that's something that really, like, when he talks about carving in people's bodies. And I'm just sitting here, I'm like, holy crap, isn't that Zsasz? That's Zsasz's shtick. He loves carving people and freeing them from their mortal coil. And, I'm just sitting here, I'm like, Nolan took almost every villain except for the Joker. There's a saying that a story is only good as its villain. And when The Dark Knight completely botches the Joker, the movie as a whole fails. Now, we'll give the movie credit. Aaron Eckhart nails Harvey Dent in Two-Face. I'll get to that later in a bit, but I really feel like he was the only thing in this movie that I love. And I am so mad that Ledger gets such praise for honestly what I feel is no real reason, when Eckhart is just kind of cast aside as, yeah, he was in the movie too. But anyway, one of the key features of the Joker, one thing that I think is, as a Batman fan, is the most important thing about the Joker is that the Joker is funny. There's a reason it's called the Joker. He jokes. I always liked the Joker in Batman the Animated Series. Why? Because he's a legitimately entertaining character. Sure, he's a psycho and you want him to be stopped, but he's entertaining. He does things that you think are legitimately funny. Yes, he also does things that are horrifying, but I find myself giggling and laughing at some of his completely awful jokes just because they're funny. And I think the Joker needs to have at least some sense of humor, which is something that Nolan's Joker lacks. And I will call this Nolan's Joker. I mean, I don't blame Ledger for this at all. Like, I don't blame Ledger for the whole failings of the Joker's character. He did the best with what he was directed and what was written in the script. I blame this on Christopher Nolan and his seemingly hatred for being accurate to comics. I mean, if you want to know why I'm harping on the Joker so much, is because, one, the Joker was hyped, and two, people praise the Joker like none other, as if he's the greatest thing to ever grace cinema. And three, I think the Joker, when you have a movie with Batman and the Joker, you have two arch nemesis here. The conflict between Joker and Batman is huge. If you screw it up, you've ruined the movie, which is another reason I mean, there are many different reasons, which I'll get into, but I want to get this out of the way first, because I feel this is one thing that really bugs me. Heck, Ledger's Joker, Nolan's Joker, is not funny. He laughs, he does jokes, but this is just like this is the kind of humor that you'd see of a stand-up comedian in a really bad movie. This is the Delta farce equivalent of the Joker. And this is the thing that Nolan doesn't get. Having the Joker do something psychotic and then laugh is not funny. It's just disturbing, and I don't care if that's what he was going for. It's not the Joker. The Joker does stuff for lulz, not because he wants to bring out the darkness of every human being to show that they're really just as nasty as me. No. This Joker misses the point on everything. Okay, I've used this example many times when discussing the Joker. The one thing that I will say completely embodies the Joker is that episode of Batman the Animated Series where Joker tries to copyright a fish. He Joker gasses some fish and wants to copyright them. Is it stupid? Yes. Is it entirely in character for the Joker? Yes. It's like his plans are idiotic, but that's the point. It's comic book. You can't completely eschew all comic book ridiculousness, or else you end up with a bland movie, which is what I feel The Dark Knight is. I feel like this is just a Nolan movie that has some guy dressed up as a Batman. This doesn't feel like a Batman movie. And the Joker is he's just cruel and evil. That's it. That's all I can say about this Joker. He's cruel and evil. There's no funniness, there's no goofiness, there's no absurdity to his plans other than, I want to kill a bunch of people just to prove that I'm right. This is more like the Riddler. I'll do anything to prove that I'm right. And like I said, he's pulling around almost every other Batman villain. Hell, I would have loved the Riddler. Jeez, the Riddler's great. Anyway, moving on. I think I've said most of what I needed to say about the Joker. He's not the Joker. And the only really funny part is the part where, the Joker's blowing up the hospital, and he's like, and then it doesn't blow up, and he's just like, that was improv. There was a malfunction in the explosives, so yeah, that wasn't even in the script. Anyway, all right, moving on. I don't want to sit here and ramble for an hour about the Joker, even though I think it's a big issue. One of the core issues is that the Dark Knight fails in is that it doesn't have Batman spirit. This is something I find odd. Batman Begins had it. It had that feel. Gotham City looked like a real life Gotham City. It had that dark, gritty, grimy feeling. It had that gothic darkness to it. And this just feels, in The Dark Knight, and this is also in The Dark Knight Rises, but The Dark Knight Rises is just an awful movie altogether. The Dark Knight, it just feels like New York. It's just New York now? I mean, they talk about all the criminals, but at least in the Batman Begins, it felt like a grimy city. That's the reason Ra's al Ghul was trying, or Ra's al Ghul. I call him fake Al Ghul because he's not Ra's at all. That's why he wanted to destroy Gotham City, because it was so horrible. But in this, it just feels really clean. A lot of daytime shots. And it's like, Nolan, did you miss the point? Nolan, you got this in Batman Begins. You nailed that feel. And I'm gonna have to rewatch Batman Begins again. I mean, granted, I do have issues with Batman Begins, but I mean, you got a lot of this feel. You got the Batman spirit in Batman Begins, but in The Dark Knight, it's gone. And I was rewatching the movie, and I think I figured it out. Nolan casualized the movie. He cut out a lot of aspects that would make it feel Batman, because he wanted to reach a wider audience. And I've actually looked up discussions online of this, and a lot of people are like, well, you can't make a comic book movie without appealing to a wider audience. Obviously, you had to take out what's really Batman to make it work, and that's not true. I think this is the reason why. But I mean, look at Avengers, and yes, Avengers isn't entirely accurate to the comics. I'm not familiar with I'm more familiar with DC than I am with Marvel, but from what I've heard, that Chitauri are very different from their comic book counterparts. But it still nailed the spirit. It is the most comic book movie I've ever seen, and to this day, I say the Avengers is the first Avengers. I don't like Age of Ultron. The first Avengers is the best superhero movie ever made. I said it. Superhero and comic book movie. The Dark Knight, it feels like a Nolan movie. It doesn't feel like Batman Begins felt like a Batman movie. This feels like a Nolan movie with all of his Nolanisms and his. And if you're confused when I say Nolanism, that's when I say when Nolan writes something and a character goes on about these deep, emotional, metaphorical rambles. I was in Burma. Some of these work. Some of these can work. And Batman Begins, the whole thing of Bruce going on about how Batman is supposed to be a symbol, that works. It's in character. It's about what Batman is. And as much as I like the line, some men just want to watch the world burn, it's a Nolanism. It's just, it works sometimes. I love Inception. Some people actually think I hate Nolan entirely. I don't. I love some of his movies. Inception is one of my favorite movies of all time. And his Nolanisms worked in that. Everything was set up in this. But when you're trying to shove these in Batman or Superman, and Man of Steel is an entirely different discussion. But when you're trying to put these kinds of things into a Batman movie, you have to be careful what you're doing. It just doesn't feel Batman. And it's not something I can actually entirely put into words, but it doesn't feel Batman. The entire feel of the movie, the way it's written, the way the characters talk, it feels like a Nolan crime movie. either he just doesn't get it, or he's actively trying not to do it to either fix comic books, because I know he doesn't like comic books, which I don't know why you would be making movies unless he probably just wants to make money. But or if maybe he's legitimately just trying to casualize the movie. He just wants to get more money from people, and he doesn't care about making a good adaptation. And yes, I will say it is a good movie. If you don't know anything about Batman, if you don't care about Batman, if you're looking at this from a technical basis, from cinematography or acting, or I can't really see the script, but because the writing is still iffy, but if you're just sitting here wanting a fun summer movie, wanting a dark, gritty summer movie, yeah, you're gonna like it. But as a Batman fan, I can't. This is something I'm really passionate about. I'm really passionate about Batman. If you see me, Stephanie Brown is my icon on Tumblr, because Stephanie Brown is my favorite character. Like I said, I've been obsessed about Batman, so this is something I consider very important. Okay. Doesn't feel like it doesn't feel bad. Doesn't feel like Gotham City. It doesn't feel, and Batman. There are moments in this movie that I thought were good. There were moments between Bruce and Alfred where they go off on each other. I like that. That is the core of their relationship. The banter, the sarcasm, the jokes, Alfred making quips. That's the relationship. And a lot of the time, this is something I've heard people complain about the Nolan movies, saying that there's not enough Batman and there's too much Bruce Wayne. That's not the problem. You can have an entire movie, or maybe not an entire movie, but like an episode of a show. You can have an entire episode without Bruce putting on the suit once, and he would still be Batman. We get glimpses of this. This is when the Joker is attacking, and then Bruce is just walking by, and he just disarms people and is taking apart their guns, like. That's one of those moments where I sat there and I'm like, yeah, it's Bruce. Because, let me get a little analytical with Batman here. To me, a lot of people say there are two levels to Bruce. There's the mask of Bruce Wayne, and then there's Batman. Which is true. At his core, he is still Batman. No matter what he does, no matter if he's wearing the suit or not, he is Batman. I argue there are three levels to it. And that's something I don't think as many people, I'm sure there are other people who said this. But there's Bruce Wayne, genius billionaire playboy philanthropist Bruce Wayne, sits around doing stupid stuff because he's an idiot, which is a cover for Batman. The true core of his personality, the man who believes so much in justice that he's willing to become the Caped Crusader, to fight villains. But then, I think there's a third level. A deeper emotional level. It's the 8-year-old boy. The 8-year-old boy who watched his parents die. And I think that is at the very core. That is the source of his sense of justice. He's never going to let what happened to him happen to anyone else. That was what drives him. That emotional scar is what drives Bruce to do what he does. I do think a lot of people just sometimes ignore this. There's a line. I don't particularly care for the Justice League cartoon, but there's a line when they get turned into kids. And they didn't turn back. And Bruce says, I haven't been a kid since I was 8 years old. And, that's because he hasn't. It was like Batman was born the second his parents got shot. That's it. But we don't ever, so many people miss that part of Bruce. So a lot of times you get Bruce being serious, and I'm Batman, I'm Bruce Wayne, I'm Batman. That is not a problem if you focus on, in the show Beware the Batman, you see Bruce just chilling out in Wayne Manor, talking about how he's trying to get his sleep down to 2 or 3 hours, and he's drinking these nutrient drinks or something, these really crappy things, and he's talking about his training regimens. That's Bruce. That's the real Bruce. And One of the problems with The Dark Knight is that Bruce's character feels vapid a lot. And this happens with a lot of characters. A lot of characters almost feel like they're here just to be here. This isn't nearly as bad as The Dark Knight Rises, which has dozens and dozens of characters that don't even mean anything. But here it just feels... It feels a little soulless from the writing perspective. Bruce is just kind of talking and talking and talking and talking. But there are only moments, like I said, there are moments, but only moments where he feels like he's really Bruce Wayne. And he's not just being the Nolan Bruce. I could go for I'm fine with the movie, excuse me, having only minimal Batman. Because when Batman's on screen, it's generally pretty good. Outside of his voice, which I really think is stupid. But I can understand changing your voice, but... Really? But Batman's on screen, when he's fighting bad guys, it's generally cool. The only issue is sometimes when you watch a fight, a guy will be sitting there with a gun, and then we're trying to charge at Batman, and it's like, you have a gun. And granted, some guys in this shoot their guns unlike people in The Dark Knight Rises. Everyone just stands around for Batman to punch him. And Bruce, I just feel like there's not enough of real Bruce Wayne in this. Another thing. This is a very important point. This actually applies to all three Nolan movies of the Dark Knight trilogy. Bruce is never a detective, a real detective. There's a reason why Batman is called the world's greatest detective. There's a reason why Ra's al Ghul calls Bruce detective, or calls Batman detective. He is a detective, and Nolan misses this. Because Batman's detective work generally is, where's the plot device? Where's the plot device? The only time he does any real detective work is when he gets a fingerprint off of a broken bullet. And yes, this is stupid. It's the most comic book thing in the movie, and I loved it. Okay, I don't love it. It's still out of place, but... You see, we need more of this ridiculous comic book stuff. Yes, does it make sense that he'd be able to get a decent fingerprint off of a broken bullet just by using some computer simulation? No. It doesn't. It really doesn't at all. But it's so comic booky, which is why it feels so out of place in this. And it's like, I want more like this. And Bruce is actually doing detective work. And this is like the only scene he really does this in. And I want to say in the trilogy, and I mean, I know he doesn't do detective work in the Rises, and I'd have to rewatch Batman Begins sometime, because I haven't watched the movies in a long time. And Nolan will write Bruce as being hyper smart, almost out of nowhere. Like, in the end of The Dark Knight, he somehow out of nowhere, creates this super cell phone sonar thing, and it's just sitting here. It's like, where did you even do this? Why? How? He can barely do detective work, yet he's a super genius at some points. The problem is that Nolan almost entirely focuses on the physical aspect. Like, Batman Begins. What is his training focused on? Pretty much fighting and sneaking around. This is something that's missing in... Well, traditional Batman, the time where his life timeline goes, when he was 8 years old, he started his journey to learn how to become a vigilante and how to become Batman. He traveled the world, learned all sorts, and this is I'll use the Batman animated series since that's the one I'm most familiar with. He went around, he went to Zatar's father, and he learned, escape tricks, he learned illusionary stuff, he learned all that stuff from him. Then he went to Japan and he learned karate and learned all sorts of different fighting techniques and stuff. And this is seen in different adaptations. But then But he also learns detective work, and he learns every skill he's going to need to become the Batman. And in the Batman Begins, it's basically like, you're a ninja, you're gonna fight people. And he's like, but I'm not going to kill them. No. There's a reason he's called the world's greatest detective. And I think it's disappointing that got skipped over so much in the Dark Knight trilogy. Just... This movie is a dark and it's gritty, and it doesn't feel like... I mean, Batman can be dark and gritty, but when you take out the ridiculousness, you lose... I mean, honestly, The Dark Knight Rises, as bad as that movie is the most comic booky. Bane is punching through bricks. The Bat. Like, it's a flying Batmobile, which is something that's cool. It just... I wish it was a better movie. It's like Nolan, it's too little too late, honestly, in terms of comic booky stuff. And hell, he just came a man named Daggett. Roland. It's not even Roland Daggett. Roland Daggett's one of my favorite minor villains from Batman animated series. Still bitter about that in Rises. But The Dark Knight it's a casualized version of Batman for the masses. That's why he's so popular. Oh, another thing about Ledger. No, nothing against the man himself. He was a good actor, but the only reason people applaud him and give him so much critical acclaim is because he died. It's the sad truth. He died. And people hyped up the Joker, and obviously I don't see the appeal of this Joker at all. He's nasty, he's horrible, he's not the Joker, he's not funny. But people will praise him because he died. It was Ledger's last role. He died doing that role, which is incredibly sad. But instead of just mourning him, people worshipped him. They put him on a pedestal and say he's one of the greatest actors of our time. It's like, I think this is one of the reasons why Aaron Eckhart got so overlooked, is because people were so hyped up about Ledger and his Joker, and his Joker was just not good. Nolan screwed up any chances of the Joker being good. And I wish people were able to look at this from a more objective standpoint instead of just going, oh my gosh, Ledger's the greatest. I mean, his plans are ridiculous and poorly written. Everything he does is light Yagami, or I've compared him to Mr. Silva in Skyfall. In fact, I actually call Mr. Silva the Joker sometimes, just because his plans are just as ridiculous. It's like his plans are so ridiculous that they're Xanatos roulettes. They're incredibly complex gambits that require dozens of random things to happen in order for them to work and you to know what's going on. I mean, he couldn't do that, and Joker's never been that kind of a planner. He plans. The Arkham games show that Joker is a big planner, but never without a joke and a smile on his face. And it's disappointing. As a Batman fan who loves the Joker, and he's one of my favorite villains. He's so entertaining. But this Joker fails. This Batman fails. This movie fails. It's good on a technical basis. If you look at it as just a movie, if you look at it as just another Nolan movie, fine, yeah, it's good. It might be one of his better movies, but it's not a good Batman movie. It doesn't have the respect that Batman needs, and doesn't have even the level of respect that Batman Begins had, as much as it made fun of Ra's al Ghul, which that was really unnecessary. But I'll get into that if I ever get a topic on Batman Begins. But it fails. And it's disappointing. I like Batman Begins. With a few tweaks, I think that this movie could have really worked. And another thing. The movie's 2.5 hours long. And it suffers from a lot of the problems that Metal Gear Solid 4 suffers from. It goes on and drags out all these plots and all these subplots. And just... This movie could be less than 2 hours. You could cut out maybe a good half hour to 40 minutes and not lose anything. Some of this just feels like almost Patty. Hell, what about that whole part about Lucius being like, this is too much for one man to handle. This is, if as long as this exists, I won't work for you. Like, shut your pretentious mouth, Morgan Freeman. Just calm down. You know Bruce is going to use it for good. And all this stuff with China and Hong Kong and so much. Some of it was okay, but a lot of this movie just feels like, man, I remember I was just watching it and I was like, man, am I near the end of the movie? And I look at the little timer and it's like, you still have half an hour left. I'm like, oh gosh. The movie drags on. Really, the only thing that this movie was great at was Two-Face. I love Two-Face. I'm mad that they killed him off and didn't bring him back for Rises and some sort of plot line to finish him off. To finish off his character arc, but this is just, I think I've exhausted what I have to say at the moment about The Dark Knight. as a Batman fan, this is a big disappointment to me. And I kind of get annoyed when people praise it endlessly because it really doesn't deserve the praise. And then people bash Batman Begins. Like, come on. Okay, I think I'm done. I think I have said all I really wanted to say about this topic. I'm just disappointed in Batman, or The Dark Knight Rises, or The Dark Knight. Disappointed in that movie too, but yeah. Okay. All right, so if you wanna submit a topic, just comment below if you're on YouTube, or send me an ask on Tumblr. Just make sure you put topic in front of whatever you want me to talk about. And I do have rules, and I will post a link to that on YouTube and on the post on Tumblr. So, thank you for watching.